Are you sufficiently sticky today? It is very clammy, it's very close. I'm having to squirt myself with a Squirter Mister bottle every now and again just to keep cool. Let me know how you're keeping cool in the comments. I'm going to do a little bit of a different video today. And it's based on one of my heroes, Martin Lewis. I do like him. He's the money saving expert if you don't know who he is. And he's almost like an independent champion and advocate for people, and he's fighting against poverty and the institutions that are causing the poverty. And he's run a fascinating poll on his Facebook page today, and if it looks like I'm reading from a script, it is, because if you want a good product, you have to. Proper prior planning prevents poor performance. He asked people about their actual felt standard of living and how it actually compares to the UK average, and that's fair to do, because a lot of people feel like what they're being told isn't matching what they're feeling. And if that's the same for you, please write something underneath so that this gets a bit of traction. He asked people about the felt standard of living. The responses show what many of us already know. People feel like they're slipping backwards no matter what the politicians say about inflation cooling down. It still feels like it's getting worse. We're getting hot under the collar. Everybody's getting pressed. I don't know anybody who's really, really comfortable at the moment. Personally, I don't know anybody that's really, really comfortable at all. Everybody is struggling, even businesses. And it's got me thinking about how this squeeze compares to other squeezes in the past. You know, in living memory, many point to the 1970s as the ultimate era of British economic misery. I can remember stories of a 3-day week. I can remember power cuts and stories about power cuts and stories about skyrocketing inflation. But there's a massive difference between then and now, especially when it comes to housing. As you may know, there's thousands of people on the local Blackpool housing waiting list. I think it's 14 or 15,000, somewhere between that number last I checked. Verified 12,000, but I'm pretty sure that the last time I had a meeting with them, I was speaking to somebody and they said, yeah, it's over 14,000. But one of my questions and queries about that is, does that represent 14,000 individuals, or is that 14,000 potential families? Because that's hiding a slightly bigger figure. It could be 35,000 individuals waiting on that. So, but we're not talking about people who are waiting on a housing list. We're talking about homeowners, and that this is where the felt cost of living comes in. High inflation actually had a strange hidden benefit for people who went into home ownership. Because wages rose quickly to chase that inflation, the real value of your mortgage debt was rapidly eaten away after just a year or two, if you bought at the right time. Fast forward to today, and we are trapped in the exact opposite situation. The scales turn to the other favour. Today, the average house costs over 8 times the average income, and in many places it's much higher. So that's in a stark contrast to 4 times the average salary in the 70s. We don't have the power cuts of the 70s, but we have got a structural housing crisis because there aren't enough affordable homes. There are homes, but there are property developers that exist. And we're not just talking about people who buy fields and turn them into housing estates. I'm talking about builders who buy up a cheap house and they do the work themselves and they try and sell on a show house in the middle of an existing neighbourhood that's been rendered and grey slate, grey out. The Airbnb model, which collapsed because of the Airbnb rules, and now that's hyperinflated the prices because they want their investment back. That's caused a bit of a problem. And then they've got, if it's not occupied, it's double council tax. So again, that's another trap that's been beset. Because our wages have largely been stagnant for 15 years, I reckon so, we are carrying massive historic debts that just inflate away. It's just compounding and compounding and compounding. Back in the 70s, you could not just rely on credit cards to get by. Bank managers tightly controlled who was able to borrow money. It was only when the consumer credit was deregulated in the decades that followed that people could start masking the gap between their wages and their lifestyle, and that's what a lot of people are doing. They're living either in overdrafts or relying on credit cards, which is hyperinflated debt, and it's almost usury. It is usury. For 30 years, credit cards, car finance and loans acted as a safety valve for this pressure cooker that is boiling in the nation. But today, that buffer is absolutely maxed out. Credit lines are exhausted. The true raw standard of living in the UK is being fully exposed. In the 1970s, it was a crisis of energy and temporary inflation. Today is a structural crisis of housing and wealth inequality. And I want to know what you think. Does your standard of living today compare to what your parents had at your age? Or, like many, have you had to backtrack and go and live with parents whilst having a family just in order to make ends meet? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if there's anything that you think that's glaringly obvious that I've missed about this, because I think I'm quite right. Everyone got done over when the gold standard happened in 1974 anyway. They abolished that, they decimalised currency in the UK, brought out this new thing, and then consumer credit came after that. So this lifestyle that we've had, the 90s especially, was the peak of that. The peak of that. And then as 2000 came, it's like the rocket trajectory has just gone, and now it's going, I feel like almost freefall. Let me know what you think. We all work as hard as we can if we do. If we don't, work harder. Thank you very much for watching. I'm trying to work harder. What are you doing that's trying to make a difference in your local area? What are you going to work harder on? Because I have to work harder on telling these tales to the people like you to get you motivated to try and fix this big muddle that we're all in. Thanks for watching. Hope you can deal with this heat. It's too hot. It's too hot lately.